Tim Martin joins me on the line. Welcome to the show, Mr. Martin.
Hi, Alexis.
A pleasure to speak to you, sir. I wondered, as a fervent supporter of Brexit and also a donor to the Brexit campaign, how do you feel it's going so far?
Well, it's always very difficult to say, isn't it? Because so far we've won the referendum, we've called a referendum, won the referendum, haven't had a recession in spite of what was promised by voting leave, and we're set to leave on the 29th of March. Now, there's a lot of forces ranged against that, but I'm hopeful we just leave on the 29th of March. I think if we do that, we'll be in a very strong position. I mean, politics and democracy are always messy, and you could certainly say that of the process of leaving. It is very messy, but hopefully we'll do it.
You say we've avoided a recession. I've got to interject there and sort of say that is due to certain measures taken by Mark Carney and the Governor of the Bank of England, but you can't say it's been all rosy. We've seen plenty of companies leave the UK, plenty of companies warning that they will leave the UK. So it hasn't been easy sailing. However,
Can I answer that? Because I don't think Mark Carney's done almost anything. I mean,
straight after the Brexit vote, he did take necessary steps, Mr. Martin. Straight after the vote, he took necessary steps to prevent us going into recession. But look, you and I can argue about that back and forth.
You should give me a chance to answer that.
No, of course I will do. Go ahead.
He was one of the ones who said, Alexis, that if we voted leave, not left the EU, but voted leave, there would be a reduction in employment, an increase in unemployment of 500,000 or so. Actually, we've increased employment by over 500,000. So he's been 1 million wrong just on that measure. Household income's almost at a record level ever. Tax income's very high. Government finances are in good shape.
We also have very high in-work poverty as well, Mr. Martin. But look, you and I are not here to discuss what Mark Carney did, because he's not here to defend himself.
Questions and question your statements. That's what
I'm questioning yours. You're questioning mine, and I'll continue to question your statements. You sent a letter out to MPs in which you made several claims. Now, several of these claims that you sent to the MP have been debunked, if you like. A lot of people have been in touch with you to debunk your claims, and you still keep making them. So things like the EU being protectionist, you talk about tariffs on oranges, on coffee, on rice. I have to ask you...
You want me to answer these things individually? You're giving me a long list.
Okay.
The EU is highly protectionist.
Okay, what do you base that on?
Tariffs on over 12,000 products, including oranges, rice. They've just put up the tariffs on rice.
Okay. You said I'm going to give you.
I wrote to MPs because 3 said on BBC Politics it's not protectionist, and it's very protectionist.
But it's not true, Mr. Martin. It's not true. Oranges, for example, we have 0 tariffs through free trade agreements with Morocco, Egypt, Israel, Argentina, South Africa. You claimed that we would be able to get
from most of the world.
But that's where we get them from.
A lot of the world, and even from some of those countries you mentioned, there are tariffs.
No, there's 0 tariffs.
Quotas in the summer. So look, the EU has 16% tariffs on oranges. If you're not in one of
that is not true. It is
true.
It is not true. I have the facts myself. I have the letter sent to you by people giving you links. It is not true.
It is true. There's 16% tariffs on oranges, apart from a small band of countries at certain times of the year. There's tariffs on bananas. There's tariffs on rice.
You mentioned coffee, all right? Yeah. There is no tariffs on coffee.
There are tariffs on processed coffee.
Yes, but processed coffee does not have a trade.
Can send the coffee beans to Germany, which processes the coffee, and Germany makes more profit from coffee beans than Africa. And it's quite a scandal because the Africans would like to roast their own coffee, but they can't. So it's a highly protectionist system that particularly damages African farmers.
It is not true. Mr. Martin, please, I have to stop you. You have been saying the same story over and over again. I know it sounds good, but it's just not true. The majority of the African imports are under zero tariffs. We give the everything but arms to the poorest, the least developed countries in the world.
Well,
in fact, you're going to have to listen. You're going to have to listen to my point, and then you're going to have to come back, because all this has been explained to you in several letters by people giving you references from World Trade websites, from the World Bank websites. You keep talking about coffee. Coffee, yes, there is a tariff on roasted beans, but no trade, very little trade is done on roasted beans, because the moment a bean is roasted, it loses its value. It's got a shelf life, and we trade predominantly on unroasted beans. All these things that you mentioned, have been debunked by several people, and I
haven't been debunked at all.
Yes, you have.
If your listeners look up the tariffs for the EU, they will see that it's the biggest protectionist organisation in the world, and it's terribly unpopular for impoverishing African farmers, because farmers in the EU are heavily subsidised. A third of the money from the common agricultural policy it goes on subsidising EU farmers, and when they do a deal with Africans, subsidised EU crops get dumped on the African market, and it's a massive scandal in Africa, and it does more than any other institution to impoverish African farmers.
All of these claims that you make right now have been debunked.
You can't make those broad assertions.
No,
Alexis.
you are making broad assertions, Mr. Martin. But what intrigues me?
All my claims have been debunked.
But they have, and I will. It's not untrue. I will publish the letter on my Twitter feed that Jim Cornelius has sent to you, and he sent it to the rest of the MPs with accurate information. You are basing all your information.
His information is accurate
because he references to credible sources like the World Bank, like the ONS, you have referenced two articles.
I've spoken to him a couple of times. He does not deny that there are tariffs on oranges from America,
of course,
or that there are tariffs on rice from
Cambodia and Myanmar.
Yes.
And you know why those are there, Mr. Martin?
Children's clothes,
you know why the Cambodian, Myanmar and Cambodia have got rice import tariffs? You know why that is?
They've got them because they started to take a bigger share of rice from EU farmers in southern Europe. That's why.
Okay, so let's look at that. Let's look at that claim. So the Italian farming community complained about the cheaper imports from the Cambodia and Myanmar.
Exactly.
That claim was nothing was done about it. It was ignored for years. And what has happened now is for the next 3 years there is going to be a tariff on Cambodian and Myanmar imports, and that has been done because Cambodia has been found to contravene the anything but arms agreements, which is for the least developed countries in the world. We allow them to ship anything they'd like apart from arms to us at zero tariffs because the EU is not protectionist, but they have been found to be breaking the rules of importing cheap rice from China, labelling it as Cambodian and exporting it to us as a Cambodian product. That is the breaking of the rules, and the tariff that's been applied to them is as a punishment, and that will apply for 3 years. Also at those 3 years, the Italian farmers are going to be able to adjust their crop so that they feel that they have had a fair crack of the whip. So it's not true, Mr. Martin.
Says in the report that I read on this subject, they said that it's been decided because they never mentioned relabeling of Chinese rice. But in any event, Cambodia is an extremely poor country.
That's why
charging €200 a ton import duties, which will push up the prices for UK consumers, and they've done it at the request, as you said, of Italian and other farmers.
How much rice do we import from Cambodia? How much? You say it's going to affect the UK consumer. How much rice do we import from Cambodia? Do you know? Do you know what the percentage of it is?
I haven't got the precise figures, Alexis. Let's not get into trivial pursuits.
Oh, well, I do, because you know what? When I ask people questions, I try and understand the facts behind them, and it's 0.4%. 0.4% of our rice comes from there. So you're telling people that the price of their rice is going to rise because of 0.4% of their import. It's just not true, Mr. Martin.
Well, the reason they did it was to protect the country. As soon as you put in quotas, and there's also quotas as well as tariffs, and
for 3 years. For 3 years, that is.
Yeah, well,
those are going to last for 3 years, and I've told you why they've been put in place.
The people listening to this program know very well, in spite of what you're saying, that New Zealand wine, Australian wine, children's clothes from large parts of the world, children's shoes, it's a tariff regime, and it collects $3 billion a year through tariffs from UK consumers. The money's collected by the UK government and sent to the EU. So we can get all sorts of lost in detail on this.
Well, the detail is what matters.
Who are called banana weighers. We employ them, and at our ports, they take the bananas out of containers, weigh them, and work out the tariffs. We don't grow bananas in this country. It's just a protectionist.
You keep saying that. You keep saying that, Mr. Martin, but it's been pointed out to you that the EU is one of the largest trading blocs well, it is the largest trading bloc in the world, and it's one of the least protectionist, and you refuse to listen to people.
It's not the least protectionist in the world. Lots of
I said it's one of the least protectionist.
Have abolished tariffs. Singapore, Hong Kong, Israel, Australia and New Zealand have abolished lots of tariffs. Canada's abolished lots of tariffs. The EU has increased its tariff income in recent years, as has been well documented. So,
how do you think that the food prices in those countries that you mentioned that have that have abolished tariffs, do you think their food prices are lower or higher? Because I've got the facts and figures here in front of me. Because abolishing your tariffs does not necessarily mean that you're going to have cheaper foods.
But you've been saying that it's not protectionist, and implicitly there are no tariffs. But if you abolish tariffs or taxes on food imports from 93% of the world, it can't put prices up. It has to put them down, and that's what the argument is for retaining the tariffs. That it'll bring prices.
But already, Mr. Martin, 89% of our food, it comes into this country. In the UK, 2017, 89% came in under zero tariffs. So how much more of it do you want to put under zero? If we reduce it's going to make that huge of a difference?
That's because people, when you raise tariffs, will buy goods from areas which are tariff-free. They won't buy them. They won't buy United States oranges, and they'll be inclined to buy things from the EU or from third-party countries which have got to deal with the EU.
But you know, United States oranges are more expensive than they are here. I mean, you keep saying that we can buy United States oranges instead of dealing with other places. Well, I've already told you we've got zero tariffs. In any city in the US, you'll find that oranges are more expensive than they are here already, especially in Florida and California. They're 50% more expensive.
You know, they might have particular reasons why they raise money on oranges in the United States. But what's happening with the orange tariffs now and other tariffs and the quotas is that it's raising money from UK consumers that is sent to Brussels, and it's a highly protectionist system, which is.
Well, you keep saying that, and I don't know what it would take for you to understand that it's not accurate what you're saying. But let me ask you this:
the EU isn't protectionist. It's not a sensible argument. What you can say is that you think it's a good system overall because it protects EU producers, for example, but you can't argue, Alexis, that it isn't protectionist.
How is it protectionist?
Water uphill. Even Jim Cornelius doesn't argue that. He argues that at certain times of the year there are no tariffs, for example, on South African oranges. And he says, therefore, it's strictly inaccurate to say there are tariffs at certain times of the year.
Okay.
There aren't on South African oranges, but there are on oranges from the rest of the world.
Okay.
Even he doesn't say, in the letter that he wrote to MPs, which I've seen and discussed with him, even he doesn't say it's not protectionist. He knows it's a protectionist system. So does everyone, because that's what the tariffs and quotas are for.
Let's. I think we're going to send everybody to sleep talking about tariffs and oranges and coffee and rice. Let me ask you this, because I take my hat off to you. You're a very successful businessman. You've got 920 pubs now?
Well, I don't want to get caught in statistics, but even I don't know how many pubs I've got.
Okay, but you've got a very successful business. You've got around 37,000 employees. The one thing that struck me in preparing for this interview is that even though you are you're a fervent Brexiteer, you are, however, pro the free movement of people. How do you square that up with the rest of the people on your side of the argument, who actually, and especially our Prime Minister, when you hear her talk about Brexit, the one thing she keeps going on about is, well, two things. One is we're leaving on the 29th of March and freedom of movement ends on the 29th of March. She's very proud of that. Well, that's going to affect your business, isn't it? You employ roughly around 4,000 EU nationals?
Well, I think that I think generally immigration is a plus for a country. Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, North America have all had higher levels of immigration than the UK, and the economies have done very, very well. So I think, especially with a fairly low birth rate, immigration is necessary and a good thing, and so on. But I think that it's essential for it to be controlled by the UK government. I think, as it is in the other countries I've mentioned, I think the EU has given immigration a bad name by putting the controls for immigration in the hands of people that we haven't elected, and that's the issue for most leavers. Even if you look at last year, for example, the 2/3 of the immigration into the country was from outside the EU. So I think I would personally be in favour, and not everyone agrees with this, as you've just said, of some sort of liberal immigration policy for the EU. For example, if people have a job, and there shouldn't be a £30,000 salary limit, which I just think is absurd, then they should be able to come and work here, all other things being equal, just as has been the case, for example, with Ireland. In fact, there are no controls on Ireland. You can come over here without a job. So I think a fairly liberal and sensible immigration policy would find most leavers agreeing with it.